Good afternoon. How are you? You're kidding me. You're in Kananaskis, you're not behind your desk, and that's how you're doing. How are you? That is way, way better. It is an absolute pleasure and honor to be here, and thank you very much for inviting us to share a few words about the visitor economy and Travel Alberta with you at today's luncheon. And Shelley, thank you very much for that introduction. We need to cut that down by about all of it. More importantly, it's working and talking with you. So thank you very much again for having me here. When getting ready for what we would talk about today and with you this afternoon, we really, really loved your conference theme, resilience, renewal, and reinvention, because that really speaks to what's happening right now. In particular, it certainly speaks to the visitor economy and tourism in this province, but tourism at large and abroad and internationally. If you think about the last few years, the kinds of things that have happened in our world economy, from the global crash of 2008, 2009, to SARS, to 9/11, and what happened to tourism when those activities happened, and yet it remains incredibly resilient. It's one of the fastest industries that bounced back. It's reinvented itself. It's provided new job opportunities. Certainly, you're probably no stranger to the talk now around disruption. Things like Uber and VRBO and Airbnb and all of these other software companies that have found a place to play in the tourism world. It's reinvented itself. But through all of this disruption and craziness, I asked ourselves a question: what part of the tourism industry has survived through all of this kind of change? What business has been around the longest? So I have a question for you. This is where there's a little bit of audience participation. What kind of business do you think has lived for decades? Longest operating business in the world, what do you think it is? In tourism. What do you think it is? And this is not a hard question. So a free toaster for this lady right over here. Hotel. Hotel, longest operating directly tourism related business. Second question, if it's a hotel, and it is, when do you think it opened? We want to take a guess? Give me a year, throw out a year. Sorry? 500 AD. Interestingly, you are close. Another free toaster right over here if we could. So this hotel right here is called the Nishiyama Onsen Kyokan in the Yamanashi Prefecture in Japan. It's about a few hours southwest of Tokyo. This hotel opened up in 705 AD. Now, they just found out that it was the world's oldest operating hotel, and interestingly, there's another hotel about 9 miles up the road that was considered the oldest operating hotel, and it's called the Hoshi Ryokan, founded in 718 AD. The interesting story about that hotel is that hotel's been run by the same family for 46 generations. So clearly, if you're born in that family, you know what your career path is. Hey, guess what you're doing? Doctor? No. Accountant? No. No, you're working in this hotel. So think about what that business has seen and gone through in all of that time. Clearly, they've had a couple of renovations, at least one or two since that time. But now, you can find them on TripAdvisor. You can book them from halfway around the world and find out what other travelers are saying about the world's oldest hotel. Think about the change that's happened to our business. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk a little bit about what we're going to see for this year coming up and what we can do to seize on the opportunity and what Travel Alberta is doing to support you in your communities and driving some of this business. Because it's really not about beating yourselves because the economy is down. It's about seizing the opportunity going forward. So the question, why tourism? Well, let's answer that, but not right now. Let's take the presentation to answer that question. When tourism works, the world notices. And as I mentioned, it's one of the fastest growing industries. It rebounds very, very quickly. I think you've seen some of these stats before, but just for some global context to understand the magnitude of the business. 2015, 1.2 billion travelers crossed international borders. That's about a 4,000% increase in international travel since 1950. 4,000%. Not to mention the 5 billion who just traveled within their own countries themselves, like staycations. 10% of the world's GDP, 1 in 11 jobs, 30% of services and exports. It is a massive, massive business. It's an industry of industries. It has a low barrier to entry. Lots of people can get in the game. Lots of communities can get in the game, cities, regions, and so on. If you boil that down very, very quickly in terms of the economic impact of Alberta, and I think you've seen some of these stats before, but again, just for context, the Statistics Canada does a stats for all of Canada and showed that the tourism business was worth about $8 billion in 2013. That's the most recent stats that we have available. 34 million plus person visits, those are multiple and repeat visitors in the province, 19,000 businesses, about 127,000 jobs, and about $4 billion in tax revenue through all layers of government. It definitely contributes and can act as a bit of a shock absorber while we continue to go through this economic malaise. So we've pulled together a strategy, and we've been working on this since we were formally a Crown Corporation in 2009, and every year we've had a look at it, we've revised it, we've changed it, we've updated it, recognizing what's happening in the economy. Last year when we pulled this together was no different. We really needed to stress test this strategy to make sure that we could be responsive. And our vision is to inspire the world to experience in Alberta. And when we talk about the world, we're not just talking about international, we're talking about Albertans visiting their own backyard. And I don't know how many folks that you've talked to in the last little while. It amazes me talking to friends and family and other co-workers, the people that have not gone and visited their own part of the province, have not gone somewhere new. It was a huge province and an amazing province to explore. We want to get that message out with your help. Mission, create economic value and prosperity with those compelling invitations, and the strategy is to lead Team Alberta to grow our visitor economy to exceed 10 billion by 2020. We're firmly focused on that end goal, which you actually all contribute to. So what's the main part of the strategy? What are the three overriding strategic objectives that we focus our efforts around that deliver on the mandate that's given to us by our shareholder, the Government of Alberta? Well, those are drive to organizational excellence. It's really about being a strategy-led organization. Secondly, strengthen Alberta's competitive position, particularly as it relates to tourism. And that is all about being industry partnered, working together. Partnership creates strategic advantage in the tourism world. We understand and we've learned as we continue to do competitive research that those destinations that fail are the ones that splinter apart. Those are the ones that fall off strategy and do their own things, because then the competition can get in with a consolidated message and take away business. The third part of it, and the output of our collective work, is really growing tourism revenues, bringing economic value to the province. It's really about being market driven. Right kinds of travelers, right place, right time, right message. So we're going to boil all that stuff down into sort of 5 easy pieces. Encourage supply. This is one of the biggest things that we have to do in order to shine the light on the amazing experiences around the province. And encouraging supply is one of those things that we absolutely have to do and work with you. We don't own the till, we have no cash register, we don't own the product like a typical consumer packaged goods company. We don't. We rely on your communities for that product and experience. We take that and we use that to create demand, create a reason to travel, to start answering the question that you all have yourselves as a traveler. And when you book a trip, you're probably asking yourself, why do I want to go there? Why would I go to Alberta? Why would I go to Mexico? Why would I go to Paris? You have to answer that question that comes in the form of experiences. The next thing we do is really about driving conversion, and that's seeding and leading the right kinds of messages, right travelers, right places, with the right experiences to get them to convert. The highest percentage of conversion. We want those people to book business in your communities. And lastly, let's measure those results. Where are we winning? Where's the trend? Where's the theme? How do we get better, improve the strategy, and execute again? And that's it in simplest forms. At the very center of the strategy is always the traveler. It's always about the traveler. And the tourism industry, and I'll point a finger at ourselves, absolutely, is notorious and has been notorious for marketing to itself and forgetting that there's travelers involved. So how do we change that, and how do we think traveler first? So what's our outlook based on that strategy, just in very top line form? Well, as you can all imagine, and no doubt we're all seeing these kinds of stats, and I'm not going to give you a 4-hour rundown of doom and gloom stats, but certainly the consumer confidence index continues to fall off the cliff. I was talking to a friend, a colleague the other day, and we were talking about what's happening in our economy right now and equating it to something that we know, some devastation. There's a bit of drama in the conversation. And she said, you know, it's like we live on the very tip of Florida. Well, we don't, we live in Alberta, but I'm going to go with this. But we live in Florida, and there's a hurricane coming. And there's sort of 3 kinds of people out there. There are the folks that are truly putting their head down, they're buckling down, and they're running for cover, they're doing that. There's those people that are starting to build up walls, opportunity, looking for ways to divert the hurricane, looking for ways to get around it. And then there's those people who are packing up their bags and getting the hell out. And we talked about which one are we? Which one do we want to be, and how do we do this together? So yeah, it's down, but are we going to focus on down, or are we going to focus on opportunity in terms of a reset going forward? Where's the opportunity? Real household disposable income, that's not ideal either. It's certainly going down into the negatives. That's the forecast. 2017 is a forecast as well. It certainly looks a lot more positive. I prefer to be an optimist. I see that it's up there, and I'm hoping that it can do that. I'm hoping that we can take this opportunity collectively to focus on that goal. It's not pretty, and quite frankly this year, we're not going to lie and talk about how tourism is the super bright light in the economy. It is softer. There are some pockets around the province that are performing extremely well, but they're performing well because they've looked for ways to diversify the tourism offering. They look for ways of using tourism as an economic development tool. So tourism can act as a bit of a shock absorber to what's happening right now, but we need to look at it as beyond the shock absorber. How can we really leverage what this incredible province has to drive that value? So I'm thinking about some of the conversations that we're having lately. And I have no doubt in your communities, I see some nodding heads and some smiles. I saw some people quickly duck. In case of civil unrest, remove cement, break into pieces, and throw. And usually what's on there that's not on there is at each other. And that is the last thing that we can do as a community and as a province, is start to fracture ourselves, break apart, break up the cement, and start chucking it at each other as we try to get through this malaise. How do we rally together? How do we work together? How do we find the opportunity? How do we punch above our weight? Because again, the competition would love for us to do this. They would love for us to fall apart, because that is opportunity for them to steal our travelers. It's an opportunity for them to steal our Albertans into their market. So how do we do this? We'll have a few suggestions here, some things that we're working on. And of course, we always love your feedback. So let's speak a little bit about opportunity and some of the things that Travel Alberta is doing right now to capitalize and build on this. We spend a lot of effort, time, and resources on the industry development side of our business, for which Shelley Gromas is our VP of Industry Development, and it plays an extremely important role in creating competitive advantage. And there are a number of programs and services that we offer that we've been building on, and as we're starting to get feedback from operators who have taken these courses, they're truly making a difference. They're actually growing their business. They're getting more travelers. Getting more travelers, they're getting more revenue. They're getting more revenue. They have the ability to hire more people. Things like the Canada's West Marketplace and Scholarship Program are programs where we can take tourism experiences and promote them to operators who will buy them and sell them for us to get visitors here. The Shift Experiential Tourism Program is something leading edge in the entirety of Canada, and it's another business development program for tourism experiences. And we've done 2 of these now. Both of them were oversubscribed and sold out, and the feedback that we've had so far has been phenomenal. In fact, that program as a development tool is getting a great reputation in Western Canada, where our frenemies to the west, known as British Columbia, have started to ask how they could be involved in the program. And we said, that's very, very easy. You need to pick up your business and you need to move it to Alberta. Otherwise, you're out. It ain't for you. You need to figure out your own stuff. So we're getting some legs, and we're getting recognition. And the word is not Travel Alberta. It's we're getting recognition as focusing on tourism as an economic diversifier. So those are some of the examples, the cooperative marketing fund, as well as a churning fund to get businesses going as well. So those are some of the things at the tip of the iceberg that we can do. You'll see 35 plus new and refreshed export ready experiences. That number right now I think is about 75. And we have another part of our business called the business development team, and they go out on ground into the communities working with operators. I'm sure they may have worked with some of you and looked at opportunities and experiences where maybe it wasn't seen before. How do we pull a cluster of different things together, create an itinerary, and then we can package it up and sell it, and we can get people moving through your community, whether it's an RV, it's a road trip, it's a day trip, what have you. How do we push visitation to other parts of the province? Because that answers the why. So the collaboration on that front has been absolutely remarkable. And those 75-ish plus new experiences, those have all come about in about a year's time, which says to us that that is the tip of the iceberg. There's so many more things out there that we can do. More specifically around the marketing front, we've really retrenched and we've really looked at the regional market, in particular Alberta, and you've probably seen the first foray. You may have seen some more commercials on TV. That's just the start. There's a lot of other things that we're doing to enable, to support the other destination marketing organizations, the SMEs, small medium enterprises around the province, which is what primarily, as you know, tourism is comprised of, to give them a voice to attract Albertans. So you'll see a lot more focus on the regional Alberta market, BC and Saskatchewan. Those are markets that love to come to Alberta to visit. And interestingly, right now, there's about a 4.5, almost 5% increase in a decline in transborder traffic. That is Canadians going into the US and spending their money. Not a surprise, very good sign. This happened before when our dollar dipped down because of foreign exchange. I think we were at par just around 2012, so it's amazing how quickly that has changed. But the research that we've done around this to find out around foreign exchange is very interesting. And it speaks a little bit about the US. And I'm sure many of you have had a conversation around some sort of table about foreign exchange. And we as Canadians are super preoccupied. We talk about foreign exchange because we're such great outbound travelers. And we've got amazing flight access out of this province, by the way. We have the most seats per capita of any province in the country. Any province. So that's good. Lots of people can get in, and lots of people can get out. So how do we keep them here? Well, foreign exchange is kind of helping us. But what we found on the reverse side in talking to Americans and talking to travel trade operators and sellers in the US is the Americans do not focus on foreign exchange as a driver or motivator for tourism. They just go, hey, we've got a currency, it's North America, it's kind of all the same. Your bill is plastic, ours is kind of paper, but it's the same. So we're just gonna come up, and lo and behold, suddenly it's a 30% discount. And they sometimes don't even realize that until they get in destination. Well, that's pretty awesome, because then they start to stay longer, they start to spend more, and then what do they do with that information? They tell their friends and family. You're not gonna believe this, come to Canada, there's a 30% discount off the entire country. Well, did we ever have a great province for you to come to? The good and the bad thing about what's happening internationally is it's having North Americans stay here. It's the sad thing of what's happened in Paris and what's going on in other countries where terrorism has really taken root, created a lot of nervousness. People are not traveling to those areas, but they still want to travel. They still want to get out. So it's our job to get in front of them. And for the last 5.5 years, we have been very targeted and very specific in the US market, Northern, Southern California, Texas market, and the drive markets to get visitors. And we've seen an increase in the US business in pretty much every single year. So we're not just starting now, we've already created the foundation. It's how do we get more of this business? How do we reap more to get into the province? And again, that comes down to your communities, because you own the experiences, and that's what we have to sell. So that's a good news story. There are more Americans coming in here, and anecdotally, talking to operators, that's exactly what they're telling us. they are seeing a resurgence of funny accents coming up and spending time in the market. Bring the accents up, bring more of them. There's a question we had at the table here during lunch about China. That seems to be a very hot topic. And that is a great opportunity for us. If you've hopefully probably heard, one of the crown jewels that we've been working on for years and years and years in Alberta is to get a direct flight out of China. And we finally landed that with Hainan Airlines, and that service is starting into Calgary on June 30th, 3 times a week. That is massive. That is massive. And it's important to note that when we talk about China, this isn't just about China coming and going to the Rockies. I want to make that very clear. The Rockies are an international draw, like Vancouver is, like Niagara Falls, like the CN Tower, although I can't figure that one out, it's just kind of a big tower. But anyways, Toronto's going to have something, they don't have a hockey team. But, so was that out loud? Somebody put that in the script, it wasn't me. The point is they're looking for great experiences around the province. And again, it's our job to help show those experiences. But the opportunity in the communities that you own is how do you get your community ready if you're interested in this business, whether it's through a bus tour, whether it's through fully independent travel. There are more Chinese traveling on their own, renting cars. Is your community interested in growing some of this business? Now, we don't have a busload of Chinese visitors sitting in our parking lot at Travel Alberta that we can send out. We don't have that. But what we can do is help you if you're interested in this piece of business. Maybe it's just a stop, but that's business we haven't had before. How does it all come together? How do I simplify all of these moving parts in an industry of industries? Well, it's really about working together, and this creates a competitive advantage. What's the roles and responsibilities that we all have as organizations? You can apply this at the global level, the national level, you can apply it at the provincial level, and you probably could apply this really at the local level. So access, assuring supply, the policy side, land use framework, those kinds of investments in the government, creating a crown corporation for marketing, that's really the role of government, creating that environment for business in that aspect. There's the alignment part, the creating demand, the marketing of the amazing experiences in the province, and that's where we come in. Or your local DMO. If it's exactly in the marketing side, what do they do to the community to entice visitors? And then thirdly, the goosebump, creating the animation, creating the reason why. Creating those amazing experiences that travelers come into your community, and what do? They pull out the cell phone, and they start tweeting and Facebooking and Instagramming, and that's all content for your destination. And what are they doing? They're telling their friends and family. And who's the #1 trusted source of travel information? Who are you going to believe? TripAdvisor or your Uncle Ted, if you happen to have one? Exactly. If you don't, I'm sorry, we can get you an Uncle Ted. But that's incredibly powerful stuff in its content, and that's content that we use to help market your destination. So you put all of those together, you focus right on the center and the traveler, and then you start executing on your strategy. And that's what we work towards all the time, all these different pieces of the puzzle. So I want to go back to that question around why tourism. And one of the biggest challenges that we have in this industry is trying to measure return on investment. And the study of return on investment and understanding return on investment is actually a fairly recently new idea, only in the last 20 or 30 years, to really understand the impact of leisure tourism, business tourism, visiting friends and relatives, and trying to understand how to quantify it, qualify it, because it is so massive. It is an industry of industries. So a lot of the things that we naturally default to are things like direct travel expenditures, and those could be heads and beds, hips through turnstiles, plates, forks and knives on tables, things like that, attractions. The travel employment as a result, people that staff those businesses, hotels and so on. Traveler generated payroll, those people are hired to deliver experiences, and of course traveler generated taxes, which we talked a little bit about earlier. But where it's a little bit more difficult, but equally important to understand the benefits that tourism has, I know you probably all know this, but we don't spend a lot of time, I think, talking about it, are these two big buckets here, and they're a little bit around the softer side. Talk about indirect and induced benefits. Think about diversifying the economy. Not stacking your deck in one area, but playing a few more cards in a couple of areas. Attracting other businesses because your community is successful at generating visitors and activity, economic churn. Encouraging entrepreneurial spirit, opening your business, a zip line, a retail store, a very cool restaurant. Generating new payroll because they're hiring people to work in the community. And using tourism as an economic driver to attract new businesses. The other part that we're still learning and understanding is the psychological and the developmental benefits of tourism. And this is really interesting in terms of neighborhood revitalization. But certainly there are examples here. One example that got a lot of press, and I'm just using this as a reference point, is New York City. And if some of you might have come across this story, they had their old B line, their overhead line, train tracks, and it would have cost millions and millions and millions of dollars to tear this thing down and tear it apart. And somebody figured out how to turn it into a pedestrian walking path. And that, as part of the New York experience, has attracted visitors. There's all sorts of other examples like this. So, generates pride, enthusiasm at the local level. Who doesn't have community pride and want to show off what they have to offer? Big or small, it doesn't matter. It's what we own. Encourages historic preservation, whether it's an event, it's a building, it's some sort of an attraction that could turn in a reason for why a traveler would come to visit you. Creating public social activities and so on. So there's a lot of power in these things, and we're still understanding how they can affect business, how they can be used as an economic tool. But it is very, very powerful because cities, regions, towns, governments, countries around the world are onto this and figuring out and plowing millions and billions of dollars into development. One fairly recent example I like to reference because it boggles my mind every time is Croatia. Anybody ever been to Croatia? Anybody? Anybody? Okay, a couple of people. How was it? Was it pretty awesome? It was pretty spectacular. Well, the Croatian government decided and understood that tourism was such a massive driver for their economy because they didn't have actually a lot of other exports, but using tourism as an export economy, that they did a fairly significant investment. $20 billion into tourism infrastructure, attraction development over the next 5, 6, 7 years, because they got it. Now, that would be fairly awesome for Alberta. I'm not expecting that much in this budget. However, imagine what we could do with 20 billion, I'm just saying. But when we're thinking about tourism development in your regions, it's not just the heads and beds, there's a whole bunch of other benefits as well, and using tourism to leverage that attention. One of the most recent examples around leveraging attention, I'm just going to get the note on this because I want to make sure that I say it right. If you remember, and you might know this, there are a number of things to do in Okotoks, and I had no idea. I had no idea. I had to go down and see it for myself. I had to go see what the number of things to do in Okotoks. And there were a number of things for me to do. And I did some things, and I went around, and we had a visit. We spent money in the community. And then we traveled on through, and we thought, you know what, we're gonna keep driving. We're gonna go to Turner Valley. And we're gonna go to the Chuck Wagon, and we're gonna go to Eau Claire Distillery. So we spent more money. And then Black Diamond, and we spent more money. Designated driver, just saying. But we went into these communities because we had a reason why. And in talking to Alex about the story of Okotoks, that tourism slogan, you couldn't pay an agency billions of dollars to come up with that, and look at the attention that you got. And what happened? You got all sorts of calls and inquiries because all sorts of other businesses wanted to find out what was going on, and you're actually starting to see impact. That is brilliant. I wish I thought of it myself. There's lots of things to do here. Sometimes it doesn't take billions of dollars. Sometimes it takes a slogan on the side of the C train to get some attention. These are all operators from around the province, and we asked a question of these operators last fall as we started to really hit the slide into the economy. And these are operators of various kinds of businesses, and we asked the question, why do you do what you do? Why are you in this business? Why do you even care? And it was amazing to see the reaction of these people, because it was two things is what it boiled down to. Giving back to their community by being part of an amazing experience, and the joy that they were giving to visitors, whether near or far, because that was creating economic value. That was the return on investment for them, was that piece of it. And it was brilliant. The stories would just, it wouldn't break your heart, it would just bring that economic tear to your body, and that emotional tear that these people were truly invested in making our communities a better place through tourism. And we call this Team Alberta. We think you're all part of Team Alberta because we're all in this together. And it's not meant to sound as a rah-rah today. It's more a point of focusing on what can be positive and where we want to go versus sitting down and being in Florida and being in the hurricane position and buckling down. What can we do together? So I'd like to just finish off by simply saying that we firmly believe all our hearts that tourism in fact does work. Resilience, renewal, and reinvention absolutely fits with the Tourism Works idea and where we want to go forward. And with that, please make sure that you keep in touch with us, stay connected. We want to hear from you, we want to learn from you. I heard great stories at lunch today about things that are going on in the province that don't get press. That helps sell the story. So I hope you enjoyed the rest of the conference. Thank you very much for allowing me a little bit of time to share a bit of the story. And I'll be here for the rest of the day and into the evening, and look forward to talking to you, interview if you have any questions. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.